Although she was capable of writing very wise thoughts, she was quite incapable of following her own advice. Her periods of depression became more frequent, and the phone still refused to ring. To distract herself during these empty hours, and in order to practice her French, she began buying magazines about celebrities, but realized at once that she was spending too much money, and so she looked for the nearest London library. The women in charge told her that they didn't lend out magazines, but that she could suggest a few books that would help improve her French. "I haven't got time to read books." "What do you mean you haven't got time? What are you doing?" "Lots of things. Studying French, writing a diary, and what?" She was about to say, waiting for the phone to ring, but she thought it best to say nothing. "My dear, you're still very young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Read. Forget everything you have been told about books and just read." "I've read loads of books." Suddenly Maria remembered what Mailson, the security officer, had told her about wives. The librarian before her seemed a very sweet, sensitive someone who might be able to help her if all else failed. She needed to win her over. Her instinct was telling her that this woman could become her friend. She quickly changed track. "But I'd like to read more. Could you help me choose some books?" The woman brought her The Little Prince. She started leafing through it that same night, saw the drawings on the first page of what seemed to be a hat, but which, according to the author, all children would instantly recognize as a snake with an elephant inside it. "Well, I don't think I can ever have been a child then," she thought. "To me, it looks more like a hat." In the absence of any television to watch, she accompanied the prince on his journeys, feeling sad whenever the word love appeared, for she had forbidden herself to think about the subject at the risk of feeling suicidal. However, apart from the painful romantic scenes between a prince, a fox, and a rose, the book was really interesting. And she didn't keep checking every 5 minutes that the battery in her mobile phone was still fully charged. She was terrified of missing her big chance purely out of carelessness. Maria became a regular visitor to the library, where she would chat to the woman who seemed as lonely as she was, ask her to suggest more books, and discuss life and authors, until her money had nearly run out. Another 2 weeks and she would not even have enough left to buy her ticket back to Brazil. And since life always waits for some crisis to occur before revealing itself at its most brilliant, the phone finally rang. 3 months after discovering the word lawyer, and after 2 months of living on the compensation she had received, someone from a model agency asked if Sonora Maria was still at this number. The reply was a cool, long-rehearsed yes, so as not to appear too eager. She learned that an Arab gentleman who worked in the fashion industry in his country had been very taken by her photos and wanted to invite her to take part in a fashion show. Maria remembered her recent disappointments, but also the money that she so desperately needed. They arranged to meet in a very chic restaurant. She found herself with an elegant man, older and more charming than Roger, who asked her, "Do you know who painted the picture over there?" "It's a Miro." "Have you ever heard of John Miro?" Maria said nothing, as if she were concentrating on the food, rather different from that in the Chinese restaurants where she normally ate. Meanwhile, she made a mental note on her next visit to the library she would have to ask for a book about Miro. what the Arab was saying. This was the table where Fellini always said, "Do you know who's his films at all?" She said she adored them. The men began asking more probing questions, and Maria, knowing that she would fail the test, decided to be straight with him. "I'm not going to spend the evening pretending to you. I can just about tell the difference between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. But that's about it. I thought we came here to discuss a fashion show." He seemed to appreciate her frankness. "We'll do that when we have our after-supper drink." There was a pause, while they looked at each other, each trying to imagine what the other was thinking. "You're very pretty," said the man. "If you come up and have a drink with me in my hotel room, I'll give you 1,000 francs. Maria understood at once. Was it the fault of the model agency? Was it her fault? Should she have found out more about the nature of the supper? It wasn't the agency's fault, or hers, or the man's. This was simply how things worked. Suddenly, she missed her hometown, missed Brazil, missed her mother's arms. She remembered Milson on the beach when he had mentioned a fee of $300 at the time. She had thought it funny, much more than she would have expected to receive for spending the night with the men. However, at that moment she realized that she had no one, absolutely no one in the world she could talk to. She was alone in a strange city, a relatively experienced 22-year-old, but none of her experience could help her to decide what would be the best response. "Could you pour me some more wine, please?" The Arab man filled her glass, and her thoughts traveled faster than the little prince on his travels to all those planets. She had come in search of adventure, money, and possibly a husband. She had known that she would end up getting proposals such as this because she was no innocent and was used to the ways of men. She still believed in model agencies, stardom, a rich husband, a family, children, grandchildren, nice clothes, a triumphant return to the place where she was born. She dreamed of overcoming all difficulties purely by dint of her own intelligence, warmth, charm, and willpower. But reality had just fallen on her. To the man's surprise, she began to cry. He did not know what to do. Caught between his fear of causing a scandal and his instinctive desire to protect her, he called the waiter over in order to ask for the bill. But Maria stopped him. "No, don't do that. Pour me some more wine and just let me cry for a while." Maria thought about the little boy who had asked to borrow a pencil, about the young man who had kissed her and how she had kept her mouth closed, about her excitement at seeing Rio for the first time, about the man who had used her and gave it nothing back, about the passions and loves lost along the way. Despite her apparent freedom, her life consisted of endless hours spent waiting for a miracle, for true love, for an adventure with the same romantic ending she had seen in films and read about in books. A writer once said that it is not time that changes men, nor knowledge. The only thing that can change someone's mind is love. What nonsense! The person who wrote that clearly knew only one side of the coin. Love was undoubtedly one of the things capable of changing a person's whole life from one moment to the next. But there was the other side of the coin. The second thing that could make a human being take a totally different course from the one he or she had planned, and that was called despair. Yes, perhaps love really could transform someone, but despair did the job more quickly. What should she do? Should she run back to Brazil, become a teacher of French, and marry her former boss? Should she take a small step forward? After all, it was only one night, in a city where she knew no one and no one knew her. Would that one night and that easy money mean that she would inevitably carry on until she reached a point in the road where there was no turning back? What was happening here? A great opportunity or a test set her by the Virgin Mary? The Arab was looking around at the paintings by Joan Miro, at the place where Fellini used to have lunch, at the girl who took the coach, and at the other customers arriving and leaving. Didn't you realize? More wine, please, said Maria, still in tears. She was praying that the waiter would not come over and realize what was going on, and the waiter, who was watching it all from a distance out of the corner of his eyes, was praying that the man and the girl would hurry up and pay the bill, because the restaurant was full and there were people waiting. At last, after what seemed an eternity, she spoke. "Did you say 1,000 francs for one drink?" Maria was surprised by her own tone of voice. "Yes," said the man, regretting having suggested it in the first place. "But I really wouldn't want. Pay the bill and let's go, and have that drink at your hotel." Again, she seemed like a stranger to herself. Up until then, she had been a nice, cheerful, well-brought-up girl, and she would never have spoken like that to a stranger. But that girl, it seemed to her, had died forever. Before her lay another existence in which drinks cost 1,000 francs, or to use a more universal currency, about $600. And everything happened as expected. She went to the Arab's hotel, drank champagne, got herself almost completely drunk, opened her legs, waited for him to have an orgasm. It didn't even occur to her to pretend to have one too. Washed herself in the marble bathroom, picked up the money, and allowed herself the luxury of a taxi home. She fell into bed and slept dreamlessly all night. From Maria's diary the next day. "I remember everything, although not the moment when I made the decision. Oddly enough, I have no sense of guilt. I used to think of girls who went to bed with men for money as people who had no other choice, and now I see that it isn't like that. I could have said yes or no. No one was forcing me to accept anything. I walked about the streets and looked at all the people, and I wonder if they chose their lives, or were they like me, chosen by fate? The housewife who dreamed of becoming a model, the banker who wanted to be a musician, the dentist who felt he should write a book and devote himself to literature, the girl who would have loved to be a TV star but who found herself instead working at the checkout in a supermarket. I don't feel in the least bit sorry for myself. I'm still not a victim, because I could have left that restaurant with my dignity intact and my purse empty. I could have given that man sitting opposite me a lesson in morality and tried to make him see that before him sat a princess who should be wooed, not bought. I could have responded in all kinds of ways, but like most people, I let fate choose which route I should take. I'm not the only one, even though my fate may put me outside the law and outside society. In the search for happiness, however, we are all equal. None of us is happy. Not the banker musician, the dentist writer, the checkout girl actress, or the housewife model.